All right. So I'm Zachary Chapin, and the second I started talking, the back of my throat got dry. I'm the first affirmative, and the resolution tonight is the Electoral College should be removed and replaced with the popular vote as a means of electing the President of the United States of America. And the first proposition I'd like to make is that the current system is unfair. One of the biggest reasons the current system is unfair is that it doesn't count people's votes equally. Because there's a minimum of 3 votes per state, or in the case of the District of Columbia, which gets its own votes, then because of that, population can't affect it enough that the votes are equaled out. For instance, if you look at the U.S. Census for population by state and compare that to the number of electoral votes per state, you'll find that Wyoming has the most valuable votes out of every state in the country, and Texas has the least valuable votes. Now what that means is, if you're voting in Wyoming, your vote is worth 4 times as much as someone voting in Texas. So for every 4 people that vote in Texas, they have the same voting power as 1 person in Wyoming. And on a national level, Wyoming's votes are on average worth 2.79 times as much as the rest of the country. So depending on where you live, because of the Electoral College, just where you live geographically determines how much the country thinks your vote is worth. And that's not for anything other than population count. Also, the original reason the Electoral College was created was because the Founding Fathers didn't trust that information could travel enough back in the 1700s for everyone to be well informed on the election. They felt that the common man wouldn't know the issues, they wouldn't know what was going on, and therefore they wouldn't be able to select the right person. So would you agree today that if we were to weight someone's vote more than anyone else's, you would want the person who's getting the higher weighted vote to be more educated? In other words, to have a higher degree of education and to know the issues and such. Well, if you also look at the U.S. Census Bureau's 2008 educational assessment by state, Wyoming is the 4th most undereducated state in the country. So we are giving the most valuable votes to the least educated state. So based on the original system, the original reason we had the Electoral College in effect, which was to make sure the best person was elected based on people's education and knowledge of the subject, now we're giving the people with the least education the most valuable votes. Also, electors don't have to follow the voters. The way the Electoral College works is the popular vote of a state determines which set of electors will elect the president, which means when you're voting, the popular vote of the state determines if the elector is going to vote one way or another, and tradition dictates that they should vote the way the popular vote does, but they don't have to, and there have been 3 times in our nation's history where an elector has decided to vote the other way, just based on the fact that they didn't want that person to get elected. My next point is that the current system is undemocratic. First of all, it discourages people from running and makes third-party votes negligible. Because with a third party, with the current system, a third party would have to win over half of a certain state's votes to get any votes at all. Because with our current system, electoral votes are the only thing that matters. So a third-party candidate would have to get over half of a state to get any votes at all, which means if you're a third-party candidate and you wanted to run, you're going to end up spending lots of money. For instance, in the 1996 election, the third-party candidate Perot spent $16 million on the campaign, and he spent all of that to get 0 electoral votes. But had it been a popular vote system, he really had 8 million popular votes. That was still 8.4% of the country's votes. So if we weren't on an Electoral College-based system, a third-party candidate would be more encouraged to run because they would make more of a dent in the actual votes. Also, according to the pillars of democracy as defined by the U.S. government on usinfo.state.gov, one of the major pillars of democracy is majority rule, which means democracy is defined by the majority having their choice, and with the Electoral College, that doesn't always happen. Because it's not based on the popular vote, it's possible for someone to lose the popular vote but win the election. For instance, in the elections of 1888, 1876, and 2000, a president has won without the popular vote. In 2000, George W. Bush won when he had 500,000 less votes than Gore. In 1888, Harrison won when he had 90,000 less votes than Cleveland. And in 1876, Hayes won when he had 250,000 less votes than Tilden. So even though the majority wanted a certain candidate to win, they weren't chosen just because of the Electoral College. Also, the original system's need is gone. As I said, the original reason for the Electoral College was to make sure that the person getting voted in the office was getting voted in because he was the most qualified. And the founding fathers of our country didn't think that the common person, when it was at a time when news took several weeks to get across the country, they didn't feel the common person would be educated on the issues. But now, because of the internet, news is put online within 3 hours of it happening. I picked a random article on CNN and looked at when it happened and when it was posted, and there was only a 2-hour and 47-minute difference. And 72.5% of Americans have internet access. So clearly the majority of Americans have access to all the information they would need to make an educated decision on our president. So the original need saying that the people wouldn't know how to pick the right person based on the issues is no longer there. That is all the points I have to make.